So today we're gonna talk about care for the individual worker, or ethical frameworks for employee responsibility. Okay, so we're gonna take a look at four frameworks. So four frameworks that we can use for how we show care for the individual worker. So before we start looking into the frameworks, let's look at why these frameworks exist. And the very main reason why is that we have something that we call the dignity of the employee. When we talk about the dignity of the employee, it just states that all employees have human dignity. So if you can recall from your old lessons what human dignity is, it still applies in the workplace. So as part of the business process, we have these ethical frameworks because we say that all persons, regardless of position, power, status, are essential and part of the business process. So all stakeholders are essential to the business. Your managers, employees, owners, customers. But employees are the backbone of the success of the business. Okay, so regardless of how much capital you have, if you're not able to have good employees, loyal employees that are willing to do their best for your business, your business will most likely have a hard time succeeding. Right? And even now, when we have so much automation going on or so much um, technology that are helping our businesses, it doesn't mean that employees are becoming redundant to the business, but are actually still becoming very important to the business process. For example, you may have computers or machinery that are doing your packaging, that are doing your, for example, that are creating your um, cars, cell phones, that you have machines to do these. But there are still employees that are involved in the background and are involved in how they're maintaining these machines. So regardless of how much automation we have, employees are still the backbone of success of the business. So the basic human dignity of the employee is the basis of ethical frameworks. Okay? So the basic human dignity is the foundation or the backbone of why we have these ethical frameworks. So the first ethical framework we'll tackle is what we call the ethics of care. So when we talk about ethics of care, it's an ethical model that claims ethics need not be impartial but based on relationships. So when you're looking at ethical models, you're not looking at it from a very impartial view where you're not part of the situation and that relationships aren't important, but the opposite of that, ethics can be looked at in a way based on the relationships and how the relationships are working within that ethical scenario. So some key characteristics of the ethics of care framework is that it emphasizes preserving and nurturing concrete, valuable relationships. So for ethics of care, relationships are very important, and you're trying to preserve the valuable relationship that you have with your employers, your business, and your customers. It states that we should care for those dependent on and related to us. So just as how we would care for our friends, our family, it tells us that we should care for those who are depending on us in our business. And it argues that since the self requires caring relationships with others, those relationships are valuable and should be nurtured. So, just as how we care for our friends, this model instructs us to do the same in the workplace. The ethics of care model tells us that we are to care for the relationships we built and the relationships that are formed in the workplace. And because there are relationships that are formed, this ethical framework tells us that it is our duty to care about what our employees are going through, what our customers are going through, and what the business is going through. The next one, the second framework, is what we call the partiality in care framework. So this tells us that giving preferred treatment is providing special care. Preferred treatment for partiality in care doesn't mean that you're choosing favorites, but you're providing a special care for those who need it. An example would be if you have an employee, let's say you work in construction, and one of your construction workers gets into an accident. In this scenario, for partiality in care, it tells you that giving your preferred treatment for those that need it, for example, a construction worker that was injured, is an ethically good action to do. Because for this, you're giving special care for those that need it. Okay, and for this specialty and care framework, so showing special care for both employees and customers is crucial to business success. Why? The one of the reasons it gives us is that employees work harder when they feel appreciated or have vested interest in the business. When we feel that what we're doing is contributing to a bigger picture and it's helping us reach a level of appreciation, we give more to what we're doing. So, for example, let's say you're doing classwork, and then if the teacher or your teacher acknowledges the work you're doing and you feel appreciated, it usually helps you work harder or feel that you can work harder in that subject. And for the customer side, when customers feel that they are valued, they become loyal to the business. So giving preferred treatment or special care is not necessarily a bad thing if it's based on the context of the employee and the customer. And it benefits a business when there are loyal employees and customers. So loyalty for a business is a very big factor. If you have loyal employees, loyal customers, your business is on the road to success. When you have employees that are staying for 5, 10 years, customers who buy from you regularly and spread good word about your business, then it benefits your business as a whole. The next framework we'll be tackling is what we call the capitalist justice. So, like what we tackled in one of your first lessons was the capitalist justice. This is based on contribution. Okay, so capitalist justice works with how one contributes to the business, and you're given preferred treatment based on your contribution to the business. Again, there are a lot of companies that follow this, so it puts a premium on reward and motivation. So you're rewarded for your contributions, your loyalty to the business. So for example, some employees are given 10, 15-year bonuses. So if you've been with the company for 5 years, you're given a certain bonus. And then for customers, for example, if you've been a loyal customer, let's say for Toyota, for example, if you buy a car and you've been loyal to their branch, you're usually given a reward. Or for banks, if you open an account and you maintain an account with them for years, you're usually rewarded with some sort of loyalty or rewards program. And this helps foster a relationship between management and employees and establishment and customers. So these reward points, motivation, merit systems, in a way they help the business form a sort of relationship with the employees and the customer. And it's established through these reward systems. And the last one that we'll be tackling is communitarian ethics. So, very straightforward ang communitarian ethics. Compared to ethics of care, this ethical framework is concerned with the greater community. So, communitarian ethics, what is ethical is what is good for the community. Okay, so in this ethical framework, what it considers ethical is what benefits the community the most. So it looks at the effects of any ethical action and whichever is the more beneficial one for a community, and that's what it pursues. So for example, let's take a very controversial issue, retrenchment. For a business to survive, it looks at retrenchment as ethical if it means that in the future, the business would run longer and there is a chance that this business can do good in the long run, rather than trying to maintain an unprofitable or a loss on your salary. So what do I mean by that? But that means, for example, instead of spending a lot of money trying to keep your employees, trying to keep them in your business, even though you know your business can survive, it might be more ethical for this framework that if it benefits the whole for the business to survive into the future, then you have to cut costs now. And that can be considered ethical for communitarian ethics. So what are some concerns for ethical frameworks? So ethical frameworks can sometimes promote favoritism. Some employees may feel that some employees are cared for more than others. So with certain ethical frameworks, for example, capitalist justice or partiality in care, they sometimes promote a certain favoritism. Because if you're showing preferred treatment because of a for special care, for example, your employee really needs to take time off and you give that employee 2 weeks with paid time off, your other employees may feel that you care for one of them more than others. Okay? So for partiality in care, this is a very common issue for this ethical framework. So for the second ethical framework, as it it may look like, or you may have realized, it looks like a certain level of favoritism, which that framework is kind of guilty of. Okay, so we have to look at ethical frameworks not just as a one solution fits all, but as something that we must combine with other ethical frameworks to come up with an ethical decision of our own. So this isn't something where you take a problem, you put it in a framework, and then you come up with a solution. With ethical frameworks, you have to always adjust depending on the context. And next is ethical frameworks may lead to employees to overwork themselves. For example, capitalist justice where you have a reward system. It's very common if you want to be rewarded, people will tend to overwork themselves, and this could be detrimental to the mental health or mental well-being of an employee. And this could lead to people, for example, another problem is if you have a reward system for capitalist justice, some employees may feel the need to drag other employees down just so that they could be the one to receive the reward. So these are issues that are concerns that ethical frameworks often faced, and I'm sure that if you can think of some more, these are probably good points of consideration before you apply an ethical framework. And effective management is key, but effective management is key to enforcing a good working environment. When you're looking at what to do in ethical scenarios, there has to be effective management that goes on to place. Why? Because if you're just putting out a solution without managing people, then you may get results or problems that you did not expect. Again, this isn't something like a math problem where you input a formula or a solution and you come up with a standardized answer. Using an ethical framework is very tricky because if you, let's say you're a manager and owner of a business and you employ some sort of ethical framework, it could have adverse effects depending on how the people react. That's why effective management is key for using ethical frameworks. Okay, so for that, we'll end this session on ethical frameworks.